Well, into the shop, we've got ourselves the FMS P-40B Warhawk Flying Tiger. This is a 1.4 meter plane, 4S power system. It's got the cool rotating retracts. It's got a retractable tail wheel, split flaps, some lights. Don't get all excited about that. They're pretty minimal. But, you know, this plane's been out for a while. It's still a good looking plane. And for me, the P-40, it's a plane that doesn't get a lot of attention. You know, there's all those other warbirds that get attention, and Spitfires, Corsairs, P-51s, and so on. So I was really happy when FMS sent this to me to show off. That's what I plan to do in this video. We're going to go over the parts, going to go over assembly and highlight some things on that assembly. We're going to fly the heck out of it and really show its pros and cons as far as from a flyability perspective, and then come back to the shop and do a summary. You know, who's this plane for? What are some of the things you need to be cautious of when you have it from a fly perspective, assembly, so on and so forth, all the stuff I normally do. If you like these videos, please hit that like button. If you have a question about the plane, leave a comment. There are links in the description below for the plane, for the FMS discount code, which will get you 10% off, as well as Amazon links for all the tools and things that I use when I'm assembling that you might see in the video. So anyway, all right, let's get on with it. Like all FMS planes, they're packaged exceptionally well. Inspecting the parts, you know, you'd find that the details are very good. The quality is good. The split flaps, the rotating hinges, all the control surfaces are pin hinged, which is pretty sharp. A few other scale nuggets, the 3-blade prop and the oil tank, which I didn't actually install. Even though this model is quite a few years old, still a good looking plane. Interior's a little wiry, if you will, and it'll require a little help to clean it up. Parts for assembly are pretty minimal. It's actually a very quick build, all screw together stuff. Overall part count, very small, so let's get assembling. Documentation was very good. There was a couple things. One is, when you get this, get the wings, there's a packet of wires. I snipped through that zip tie and then extended out the wires that need to go into the fuse, put a new zip tie on, kind of tidied that up a little bit. Connect the wings, slide them basically onto the fiberglass tube, and then I went through to make sure that all the wires, none of the wires were caught underneath. Then flip it over and put on the plastic pieces, which they just slide on. They do go only one way, so if you put it on, you realize it doesn't fit right, flip it around. Now, put the wing on the fuselage and run those 2 wires that you had kind of separated into the fuselage. Screw on with 4 screws, plug in those cables into the mixing board, and you're done. Tail section assembly is pretty simple. However, the first thing you need to do is drop the tail wheel so you can get access to a little hole there to screw. Horizontal stabilizer uses 2 screws. They're 2 different sizes, and one is like a 2mm and the other is a Phillips. I don't know why, but that's what you got to deal with there. After that is done, then what you're going to do is install the vertical, and it kind of just slides in place, and there's a little spot in the, basically in the bottom of the part of the fuselage that it snaps into place. You'll hear an audible snap. Then there's 1 screw that just holds that together, and you access that through that opening right there where the tail wheel is. For me, I have a problem with all the wires everywhere. I got to tidy things up. So a couple things I do. There were a bunch of wires that went from the tail section as far as the rudder elevator, and then it was just a bundle. So I zip tie those, as you see here. And then what I'm going to do when I trim the tag, I leave about a 1/2 inch or so, maybe not quite that much, and I cut it at an angle, a sharp angle. And I stick that into the fuselage so it acts like a keeper. And then after I've made that hole, I'll pull it back out, hit a little glue on it, and shove it back in. And it's kind of a nice way of tidying up and keeping those cables from bouncing all over the place. So we have this wire mess right there, which I don't particularly care for again. So I take some foam and basically I cut it to fit, and it fits perfectly in there and keeps those wires from getting in the way of me moving the tray in and out. Just looks nicer. There are several control rods with ball links that need to be installed. Pretty simple. Just put them, I basically connect them onto the servo arm and then turn in or turn out the ball link so it fits perfectly on the ball and make sure the control surfaces are level. The ball links and the tail section were super hard to turn. I had to rotate them in to shorten them, and man, it took some serious doing. But it's done in the end. Installing the propeller didn't take a lot of time either. The 3 props go into the hub, they get screwed on with some nuts, and then you're done with that. Prop goes on the motor shaft, and then here's where I had a problem. There's a hole in the spinner for the bolt to go through that goes into the propeller shaft, and it was off center, and it took me some filing to get it so it was straight. I'm flying this with a SMC regular 3400 4S. Get her all plugged in and put the canopy back on, and let's get going. Mandatory range check. I kind of walk all around it, kind of orbit around the whole plane. Check it out. Final CG test. Final control surface check before Maiden. If you've watched any of my videos before, you know on my Maidens, I take it up, I trim it, I do some stall tests, I do some CG tests, I do a bunch of landing approaches, and just kind of press the plane a little bit to get a feel for it. By the way, all the flying I'm doing here and on the fun flight, it's just a regular lemon receiver, no gyro whatsoever. She required very little adjustments to trim, and after a little bit more of testing just to make sure I have everything right, I started testing, the flaps and everything else just to make sure I've got my mixes right. Testing the flap mix, making any adjustments with the OTF system. You could use flight modes too. I find this pretty simple, so that's what I use. Let's see what she does when you go real slow and how bad does it stall. And as I tested, full up elevator, I did it in both my low rates and high rates just to try to get some negative responses, and it didn't bite you too hard. Pretty simple stall. Now a few landing approaches and some touch and goes just to get a feel for that, and that'll pretty much wrap it up. I had to play around with the CG just a little bit to get her to kind of settle in on landing, so I was having some trouble there. Did a little inverted CG test, which made me feel like maybe I could push the battery back a little bit. She'd come in pretty steady, if that's the word I'm looking for, but not as smooth and slow as I'd like. I ended up on next flight pushing the battery back just a little bit to have a slightly further back CG, if you will. On the 3400 battery, flew about 4.5 minutes. I could have easily gone over 5 minutes probably. No problem there at all. Fun flight where I just kind of take it up and push it a little bit. I've only, this is probably maybe the 4th flight. Have a little ground handling concerns. Nearly killed my cameraman, but we managed to not hit him. It's not a speed demon, but it has more than enough power to do all the maneuvers, big loops, fast passes, all the cool stuff. I found that with half flap, slow speed flying, even full flap, was pretty decent. It was easy to just kind of mosey around. This plane flies like a classic warbird, like any of the 1.2, 1.4 size. Easy to fly, slows down well, landings aren't too difficult, ground handling is good. All in all, pretty happy with it, but let's get back in the shop and talk a little bit more. Welcome back. Let's summarize this FMS P-40B Warhawk. As I said before, I think that the P-40 just doesn't get the fanfare that a lot of other planes do. And as you saw, it flies exceptionally well. It's a very good flyer. FMS did a really good job on this 1.4 version. The 4S power system is plenty fast enough. You have all the power you need to do all the cool aerobatics and such. But let's go through a little bit on the parts and assembly and all that. Really, I mean, the plane went together as simple as can be. It's an older model. So, just the way they do the quick connects and things, they didn't do it back then. And so these wings, they're staying on. You pretty much don't want to be pulling them off and on too much. I mean, I guess you can, but a lot of wires to deal with. The only issue I had during assembly, there were two things that kind of just I had to fiddle with a little bit. One are the ball links back here on the rudder and elevator. Man, they're really hard to turn. I mean, I had to really crank on them to get them to rotate at all. I don't know if they glued them or what. And then the other thing was the nose cone. It was off center, the hole. So when you put it on, it didn't line up. It wasn't flush. Other than that, I mean, the assembly was a snap. One thing I will say I did have a problem with, and you might notice that my propeller is a little scratched up. Well, doing a touch and go, and one of the landing gears, because they rotate, and there's a pin that holds everything together as it rotates through the process. Well, the pin came off while it was on the ground, and, well, you see what happened there. It scraped up a little bit. Couldn't find the pin, but I had a 2mm hex, about a, I don't know, maybe 2mm by 15mm bolt. That fit perfectly. A little epoxy, made sure not to get epoxy on any of the moving parts, and it's holding fine. So quick fix. Let's talk about flyability. From a takeoff landing perspective, pretty simple. Once I got a little more comfortable with it, the landings became smoother and smoother and smoother and better. And like all my planes, I love to do touch and goes, and I spend a lot of time doing that and getting the plane dialed in to do it. Takeoffs, yeah, there's some rudder work. Same thing with landings. Once that tail comes down, you've got to dance on that rudder a little bit to keep it straight. But other than that, I mean, that's typical tail dragger, whether you're P-51 Corsair, Spitfire, or P-47, there's rudder work. The aerobatic performance was outstanding. I really enjoyed flying this plane. It flies incredibly smooth. I wasn't flying with the gyro. I later put the FMS reflex gyro in, but I didn't really notice whether I turned it on or off. I was flying in super calm weather, so it really wasn't doing much for me. But I just found that the plane flies exceptionally well and does all the cool aerobatics you would need or want from something like this, a 1.4 warbird. So who is this plane for? This plane is for somebody who, they're flying their Ranger, they're having a great time with their Ranger, they can do aerobatics, they can have some fun. I would say that this shouldn't be a second plane, maybe a second plane. If you really got your deal down and you were a solid pilot and you're having a great time flying, tail draggers, like the Super Cub and some of those types of planes that are tail draggers, this would be a great plane to get in, next plane kind of thing. From my experience, I had a lot of fun flying it. It flew well. A lot of fun, flies a long time on a 3300. You can put a larger battery in if you want. I like to keep them light, just from the performance perspective. But all in all, great plane. If you have any questions about this plane, leave a comment. I answer all the comments. Please hit that little like button right there down below. It helps me out. There is a link in the description for this plane and a FMS discount code. And if you use that discount code, you get 10% off this plane. So anyway, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Have a great day.